Okay, I don't want to sound too ghoulish in this annual tradition of the Toronto Maple Leafs autopsy of another playoff failure. Resist the temptation to talk about the rubber blankets and the purple gloves and all that, embalming fluid and all these types of things. But here we go again. In the building last night, Game 7. Was there as a spectator. So I was out of town for the weekend. One of my boys had a baseball tournament. I get a call from my wife after Austin Matthews scored on Friday. I'm getting tickets for you and the boys for Sunday. Like, what? So went with the two boys yesterday to go see Game 7. How often are you going to go to a Game 7 live? A lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation in the building, a lot of nervous energy in the building, but a really, really good fan base last night, even early on. And I hope you got a sense of this if you're watching on TV or watching on your tablet, whatever you're watching, that in that first half of the first period, where normally I would think Maple Leafs fans would kind of go, uh-oh, here we go again, as the Maple Leafs are completely getting caved in on the shots, on the shot attempts. You know, I think a lot of people were this close to saying, well, at least they'll only have to flood half the ice after the first period. Maple Leafs fans did something that, of recent note, I'm not really used to, and that is they really got behind this team. Now, mind you, the Panthers hadn't scored yet, so that made it easier, I suppose. But they really tried to will this team into success, and things changed around between the 11-minute mark and the 6-minute mark of the first period. The Toronto Maple Leafs suddenly came to life, and we were saying things like, well, you know what, this is kind of like a Florida Panthers Toronto Maple Leafs game, where the Florida Panthers sort of controlled the tempo, controlled the pressure, but the Maple Leafs had the better chances. And that was true in the first period. Second period was an absolute disaster for the Maple Leafs, and the third period was just more of the same with beers and jerseys and trade everybody and fire everybody by the end of the night. But I was really impressed at Maple Leafs fans. We're going to talk a lot about Maple Leafs fans today. Really impressed with them in those first 10 minutes where the Toronto Maple Leafs came out really, really flat, fell apart, but the Maple Leafs fans never gave up on them. We're going to talk a lot about the Maple Leafs fans today, and Zach, I want to bring you into this conversation here. We're going to talk a lot about Maple Leafs fans. We're going to get to the what's next for the Maple Leafs with Pierre McGuire coming up in a couple of moments. But as far as Maple Leafs fans go yesterday, we'll talk a lot about them because everybody was talking about them last night. Players and coaches and media, everybody having their own full-throated swipe at Maple Leafs fans, like somehow this is Maple Leafs fans' fault and there's too much pressure on all these poor, gentle, little hockey players who just happen to be paid millions of dollars and know what the score is by now when you sign or re-sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, you know, the Matthew Tkachuk appearance today on Spit and Chicklets was an interesting one. Like, good on them, great get. You know, Yandel calls his old Florida Panther buddy and gets him on. It's a great podcast moment for that pod. But, you know, the idea that somehow Maple Leafs fans are to blame for putting their players under too much pressure. Now, I don't have great context for other sports. I am a very, very casual sports fan. I am a very hardcore hockey fan, and I'll go deep, and I've always been like this my entire life. You ask me about football, or if you ask me about baseball, or if you ask me about basketball or track and field or whatever, my knowledge of it is embarrassingly bad. But correct me if I'm wrong. What the Toronto Maple Leafs are going through and always go through with this fan base is nothing compared to what soccer fans put their teams through all over the world, is nothing what Yankees fans put their baseball team through, what Knicks fans put their basketball team through. Like, am I off base on this? There's a couple of more points about fans I want to make here, but for a greater sports context, like, I'm not off base here saying if this is the worst that a fan base is going to do to a hockey team in the NHL, compared to the greater sports universe, this is nothing. This is nothing at all. Like, am I on base or off base on this one?
100% on base. I actually got a message from someone who watches the sheet. Shout out to Jana. She is over in Scotland, I believe. I may be wrong there, but she
Right.
pointed out to me and messaged me and was like, hey, just wanted to kind of let you know about the fandom conversation that's happening here, and was like, the way that this Leafs fan base treats the team, reacts to the team, whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
is equivalent to like a middle to lower Premier League team, which would be the highest end soccer league there in England.
Yeah.
And like effectively saying it's not even close to what happens with the fan bases of like the higher end teams and the nuts, like the psycho teams. Like, I don't know, you would read these comments, Jeff, and you would think that these players are being assaulted in the streets here. Like they're walking down and having bananas thrown at them everywhere based on the way I'm reading this stuff.
Listen, I'm old enough to remember the story of Andreas Escobar in '94 at the World Cup, the Colombian the goaltender who put the ball in his own net and was gunned down by like a mob, either a henchman or a mob bodyguard, and the guy was chanting "goal, goal, goal" at him. He was just pumping bullets into him. That's bad, by the way. What the Maple Leafs fans put their team through as far as pressure goes is nothing. Now, I know also, I'm going to the extreme with the Escobar comparison, but still, this is hang on. This is what I've always felt, and it's interesting that this happened to the Maple Leafs against the Florida Panthers because I want to get to them here in a couple of seconds. But the one thing that I've always maintained is this fan base in Toronto is what every other market dreams about and the NHL dreams about. If every market was as vibrant and healthy as this Toronto Maple Leafs fan base was, do you have an understanding of how massive this league would be? Like if you had that type of fan base that spent that kind of money consistently, generation after generation after generation, how magnificent a league this was? Like, to me, that's not embarrassing, or isn't as embarrassing as taking the Stanley Cup to the Elbow Room and having 100 people show up. That I would rather have the hundreds of thousands of Maple Leafs fans throwing a jersey or two on the ice, which I don't condone, especially not during the play. Like, come on. As opposed to having to have your victory celebration in your arena parking lot. Every other team wants the Maple Leafs fan base. I assure every owner does. Gary Bettman does. Bill Daly, who will one day take over from Gary Bettman, does. Like every players who are worried about escrow want every other fan base to be like the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like it is the model fan base in the NHL. Trust me on this one. They write the biggest revenue sharing check. They always have, and they probably always will. It is a model fan base. Again, generation to generation to generation. Now, is every player cut out to play in a market like that? No. And that's why I always, like the example that I always raise of someone that, unfortunately was on some very mediocre teams, but really embraced the idea of being on this massive stage, is Dion Phaneuf. Dion Phaneuf got out there in front of every single camera after every single game. Win, lose, tie, shoot, it doesn't matter. Phaneuf was out there. And Phaneuf embraced the idea of playing on the biggest stage in the NHL. Matt Sundin was the same way. There are just some guys that are wired for it, and there are some guys that aren't wired to play in front of the biggest stage and the biggest fan base in the entire NHL. It's not for everybody. I understand that. We're going to get to roster composition in a second here, but before we get to the what's coming up on the program here today, give me a hot 30 on what you took away from last night.
Well, the biggest thing for me is just that I think that's the final straw in terms of the assemblance of the four. I'm well aware, as many other people are, that these are very, very talented players. And they probably will have success elsewhere. But as this is constructed, that has to be the end. And just the one thing I really wanted to say here, because I know Leafs fans are taking a bashing here today, they were awesome in that game last night. For the first period,
First 10
even
minutes,
through the
they were
second
great.
period, I thought like they were very much in it, and they were involved, and they were there and giving that team energy. And the guys on the ice just didn't give them enough to continue to cheer about. And you could tell after the Panthers scored the first goal that there was a deflation amongst the players, not just the arena, the players. Yeah. And then that just fed through. Like we did the show at Greta Bar, and it was like the first one went in, and it was a slumping. Like, you know, it kind of turned to Rosie and Nick, and we both kind of said to each other, it was like, that's it. Like they don't have what it takes to climb back, to fight back into this. Yeah. I don't condone the jerseys and all that stuff too. The last thing I'll say before I let you continue, I don't like that stuff, but I understand it because this is 9 years, and I think people have kind of said and tried to get their points across as a fan base. This isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. And then it's like they get dragged right back in, like me texting Jeff on Sunday morning saying, are they different? Here we go. Like, let's get there. And like me, I'm just in there. Yeah, and then it's just like, rip my heart out the same way 9 years in a row. And someone asked me on the postgame last night, the Leafs fans know they're in an abusive relationship. My answer was, yes, we know. And for whatever reason, we like it.
Yeah. And it's been going on for generation after generation after generation. All right, here's what's coming up on the program today. And it's going to be a lot of what's next for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Daily outline provided and powered by FanDuel, our partners and our sponsors. Make every moment more with North America's #1 sports book, our friends at FanDuel. And coming up on the program, you know, it's a perfect day for Pierre McGuire. There's so much to chew on from a lot of different points of view. And Pierre has observed it. Pierre has been part of it. Pierre has a unique 360 perspective on all of it. So very much looking forward to our conversation with the great Pierre McGuire. And the #1 topic is going to be the Leafs meltdown. You might want to put a comma and again after meltdown, because this seems to be a sort of annual tradition for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then the subsequent question of what's next. Now, topic number 4. I want to make sure that we park some time to talk about this one, because Saturday was just awful, in our condolences to the family and to the friends of the Scheifeles. After Mark Scheifele receives the news of the passing of his father, he goes and plays and scores the first goal, and our hearts are breaking and our hearts are overjoyed at it, and then takes that penalty late in the third period and is in the penalty box as Thomas Harley scores the overtime winner, and he has to be rescued by his captain, Adam Lowry. We'll get to the Winnipeg Jets, and we'll get to Mark Scheifele here coming up in a couple of moments. And if we have time, we'll get to the conference finals. They don't get underway until tomorrow, and that is Florida and Carolina. So we'll probably bench more time tomorrow to talk about the conference finals, but if we can get there, we get there. Essentially is what I'm saying, because we have a lot to get to today on the program. And with that, we'll bring on our marquee guest. This segment is a presentation of our friends at Budweiser. Budweiser is encouraging buds to make time for the playoffs, not excuses. Every goal, every check, every win is better enjoyed with your buds. Phone a bud, text a bud, ping a bud, and call out their excuses for bailing on the playoffs. After all, the playoffs are the most wonderful time of the year. Make them count. When it's springtime, it's go time. With that, we'll bring aboard our someone who's perfectly suited for this day. He is the great Pierre McGuire, noted hockey analyst, who joins me there. Pierre, first of all, thanks so much for joining me on what has been a very busy Monday, and as we like to say in the industry, a pretty easy day in Toronto for sports talk radio. There's a lot here. There's the what happened. There's the what's next. I just want to begin by, as we say, painting with a roller instead of a brush. Wide brush thoughts on what you saw last night. I was trying to make the point that as much as we're talking about fans today, and Paul Maurice talked about fans, and everyone's talking about pressure and fans and all these types of things, I still maintain that if every market were like this, what a healthy environment the NHL would be, with markets where you don't need any owners to write revenue sharing checks, and every franchise has generation upon generation of fan bases to build on. But what were your main takeaways coming out of last night's 6-1 loss by the Maple Leafs at the hands of the Florida Panthers again?
Before I get to the takeaways, it's nice to be with you, Jeff, #1. And #2, Zach, I wish more people had the same omnipresent vision that Zach had before I came on. I thought that was thoughtful. I thought it was smart. And I thought it was focused. So great job by Zach. That being said, My thoughts were when I watched the opening faceoff, I said, Toronto has to have an elite start. I'm sure that's not a foreign concept to anybody that's seen a Game 7. And they couldn't have had a more dismal start. They get outshot 7-0. They're on their heels, not their toes. Their goaltender's coming up large. They have some fortuitous good luck. They don't take advantage of it. Then they get the next 7 shots. And it's like, okay, the crowd's into it. Everything's good. Maybe they get it back. And then they just melt. They melt. And I know it's been cause celeb in Toronto. I'm going to throw this at you.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure you've had this take yet. Brandon Carlo's getting shredded for the Seth Jones goal.
Yep.
And I can tell you, it's somebody that's coached in the league and played at a real high level. That's not on Brandon Carlo. That's a misread by Morgan Riley.
Yeah.
That's a misread in the neutral zone by Morgan Riley. And that's because there's no forward supporting. He can't step up there. He steps, and Seth Jones jumps by the step, and it's a 2-on-1. Brandon Carlo played it. It's just a perfect shot by Seth Jones. But this is part of what ailed Toronto after that Seth Jones goal. Everybody started trying to do somebody else's job. And they were reverting back to what the Toronto Maple Leafs used to be. Full panic. For 82 games, we didn't see full panic. I saw it last night.
You know who else we saw full panic out of? Craig Berube. And all season long, Pierre. You know, there's at the whistle, there's a tight one shot to Craig on the bench, and he might as well be the Buddha. He's just back there, and he's calm and he's serene, and then those 3 goals go in 6 minutes, and all of a sudden the Buddha's going banana sandwich and just losing it on these guys. Haven't seen it all year.
Who else did it? Mitchell
Marner.
When's the last time you saw him have a nuclear eruption like that on the bench? Probably never. In all the years. So this is what I'm saying. So I'm watching that and I'm going, okay, this is not all on Morgan Riley, by the way. I'm a huge fan. I think the world of him as a person, as a player. But that's a major gaffe that never got talked about on the broadcast that I saw. Mm-hmm. And that's just, it's okay. I get it. It's just part of the game. But then I saw the other guys trying to step up and do the other people's jobs. And that's when you know it's a team that's not ready to win. Yeah. They're not comfortable in their own skin.
You know, what did you make of the and I want to get to the Florida Panthers here, and I want to focus on Seth Jones in a couple of seconds here, who may have had the best game of his season so far. He was tremendous last night. What did you make of the Austin Matthews comments about too many passengers? And second of all, because I'm stunned that after a loss like that, the captain of the team is coming out and putting his team on blast. I'm sure that whether it's at the coaching level or the management level, maybe even at the ownership level, there'll be a lot of eyebrows raised about the captain blasting the team at the end of the season like that. But what did you make of the Matthews comments, too many passengers?
Unfortunate, not called for in that venue. Maybe a day later, 2 days later, or maybe in a summertime article. I didn't like it at all. And I like Austin a lot. I just thought it was inappropriate, but I get it. The frustration part of it too is there. There's no question about it. These guys were extremely frustrated. But I'm going to take you to a player that I had the opportunity to work with, Mario Lemieux. And it wasn't when he was playing, Jeff. It's when he was in ownership. And they had just lost a major Game 5 in Detroit in 2009, and they got blown out. They didn't just lose, they got blown out. And he and I just happened to be walking out of the Joe Louis Arena together. And I wasn't working for the team. I was working for NBC Sports. And I said, Ace, that's his nickname. I said, Ace, tough one, huh? He goes, no, not a problem at all. He says, we're going to go back. We're going to win Game 6, and we're going to come back here and win Game 7. And so he went back to Pittsburgh, and it's the stuff of lore. He went to the arena. Nobody else was there, and he wrote a message on the blackboard in the dressing room for the players to see. And it was all positive stuff. And what happens? They go and win Game 6, and then it becomes the stuff of creative energy. Marc-Andre Fleury against Nick Lidstrom with time running out on the clock.
Oh, what a save.
One of the most iconic saves of all time.
Yes.
And I'm not saying Mary's responsible for the save, but I think it's just an example of what does a leader do when they're faced with misery or they're faced with difficulty or they're faced with the tough challenge. It's easier to point fingers than to get positive. And I think that's what Austin will learn from this.
Just as a quick aside, for me, I'll always remember that save because at that moment, Marc-Andre Fleury completely abandoned his structure as a goaltender and just said, F it, I need to make a save. This isn't what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to abandon everything and just make a save. To me, it's like from that era, it might be the most iconic save because he just said, screw it to structure.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Dominic Hasek. In all of
100%. Yes.
It was a Dominic Hasek type save, and I will always remember that for that reason.
Yeah. You mentioned Marner a couple of seconds ago, and the sort of theme of today's show, and I do want to get back to the autopsy here, but I think everybody is wondering, what happens next with Mitch Marner. Listen, there is going to be a lineup if he gets to July 1st, and we all know Darren Ferris of Cortex has always been an agent that likes to walk his players to free agency. You've earned it. Get there, see what's out there. You can see who's got what as far as cap space goes. And the salary cap is going up to 95.5. This isn't the most robust free agent market come July 1st. Everything is lining up for Marner to get a major payday. But there's still that tug. He mentioned post-game yesterday, they took a chance on a skinny kid from Toronto. Played with the London Knights, Don Mills Flyers, Vaughan Kings, GTHL kid, Hill Academy, whole deal for Mitch Marner. And I can't help but, something you referenced with Marner losing it on the bench, is that moment where it finally dawns on him that this actually might be it for my time in Toronto. Did you get the same feeling?
Yeah, for sure, Jeff. And one other thing. When he was doing that post-game presser, he didn't say it means a lot. He says it meant a lot. And maybe he didn't mean to speak that way, but I took it that way.
Interesting.
It meant a lot. Yeah. If you're staying with a team, it means
a lot. Yeah. It's funny, too, because John Tavares talked a lot about staying in his post-game, and you didn't get that. You got a lot of reflection from Marner. This was as opposed to this is or yes. This will be. I know we're trying to put the accent on the right syllable here, but I think you're really onto something here by how Marner is speaking about his time in Toronto. And I've maintained this. Like, Mitch Marner is an elite level talent. As far as skill goes, one of the best in the NHL, but not every player works with every team. We've seen this is a story as old as the game itself. If he goes somewhere else, I fully and take your pick, Carolina, Utah, Detroit, like wherever, he'll probably go there and be really, really successful and might even be dynamic in the playoffs. He's with a different team and a different style of player. I always go back to how Mitch Marner looks so different playing in the Four Nations with Sam Bennett as opposed to Austin Matthews. Not a slight on Matthews. It's just playing with someone like Bennett brought out different things in Mitch Marner in a really high-pressure situation, and he was able to excel. And if you can't change the whole team to make Marner work, then maybe it is time. And every indication is it's time. Pierre.
They're not changing the coach this time. That's your line. They can't change every player, but they can change the coach.
Yes.
They're not changing the coach this time, my friend. They're changing the players. And I was thinking about that today, too. And I just want to throw this at you and your viewers and listeners. Brad Marchand, the last 2 years, has been the captain of the Boston Bruins.
Yep.
It hasn't worked out. It didn't work out. After Krejci and Bergeron and Chara left, it hadn't worked out for Brad in Boston. Do you see that player playing on the third line with Luosterainen?
And Lundell.
You see that? See
so
that
good.
Player?
Yeah.
Right? Probably the best player in the game last night, I would say, in Game 7. And if he wasn't, he and Seth Jones were head-to-head.
Yep.
Because his role got changed, and he accepted his role, and he was comfortable playing with the people that he's playing with.
Yeah.
He wasn't comfortable being the captain of the Boston Bruins. He wasn't comfortable playing without Bergeron Krejci. Wasn't comfortable in those situations. See, I think that if he's moved to the right, or he chooses to go to the right place, I think you could have a player, and people are saying Toronto, well, see, we told you this guy was really good, and now all of a sudden his role changes, and he is really good.
Yeah.
He is really good.
What's interesting, and again, we'll see, like I'm sure, Bill Zito will have obviously a say about this before it gets there. I look at this Maple Leafs team and say, like, everything they need is on Florida right now, whether it's Sam Bennett as a 2C, whether it's Brad Marchand as a top 4 winger, and whether it's Aaron Ekblad as a number 1 defenseman. Like, everything this team needs is on the Florida Panthers right now and poised to be a free agent. I don't know if they get there. I don't know if they want Toronto. But do you see the same thing? Like, I look at the Maple Leafs and say, like, they need 2 top four wingers. They need a second line center, and they need a number 1 D. And maybe even if you squint, you can make a case about goaltending too. But do you see the same thing that I'm seeing here, Pierre?
100%. That's why I love being on your show, because you're reading this thing like a book. It's perfect. And the truth is that, can you keep John Tavares as a 3C at $2 to $4 million a year?
I doubt it. I don't know.
You can't have him as a 2C.
No.
No. You can't. That's what I'm saying. So I'm just trying to roster play with you. Can Sam Bennett be the 2C in Toronto? 100%.
100%.
So I still can't believe that he's not a Calgary, but that's another story for another show. And I can't believe I still can't believe Matthew Tkachuk's not in Calgary, but that's another story for another show. Yeah. The general manager from Calgary is in Toronto.
Yeah.
So you'd have to ask him that question. Mm-hmm. All that being said, the roster construction is going to matter a lot. They learned a lot, I think, from this series. And what they need to pay attention to is that objects in your rearview mirror are closer than they appear. Ottawa's closer than they appear.
Yes.
Montreal's closer than they appear.
That's a good point.
Detroit is closer than they appear. I know everybody's having fun ripping on Detroit. Wow. I know their prospect pool really well, and I'm telling you, they're much better than people think. That Atlantic division isn't really going to take a step back. You think the Florida Panthers are going anywhere anytime soon? It's going to be hard to make the playoffs in the Atlantic next year. It's going to be real. It is every year. How's Boston feeling? I heard their press conference at the end of the year, and they said, we don't just see ourselves as a playoff team. We see ourselves as a team that's going to make serious inroads in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's a team that missed the playoffs this year.
See, and here's the other thing, and again, I'll throw another log on the Maple Leafs, and what's gonna be a real challenge here for them going forward is this is a team that doesn't have any prospects that are gonna walk in and change anything, and they don't have draft capital either to play with. Like, all of their problems here have to be solved with the checkbook. And to make that work, like your question about Tavares is a really interesting one too, because again, you play on the hometown heartstrings. John, we remember the pajamas and the pillow and all of it. Like, do you want to stay? You've put however many million in the bank right now. Do you want to play the game of hockey on the ice or the game of hockey off the ice, which is I'm trying to get as much money as possible here? Because, and I keep coming back, for whatever reason, I keep coming back to Utah for John Tavares. And I look at all those young players on Utah, and especially down the middle, and I say, would they offer something ridiculous for 2 years for John Tavares? John, our young guys need you. They need an example. You're a great one. You want to bring your family to Utah for a couple of years. That's what I keep coming back to for John Tavares. But I look at this team and I say, like, the only way they're going to do this right now is to buy their way out of it. And then the other question here too is, you talk about what you've learned along the way and what you've discovered. What they've discovered is Matthew Knies is an exceptional hockey player. And the game of the general manager now is identify your core, pay them for as long as you can, and bet on them. What happens with Knies? What happens at Knies this offseason?
So you got to sign him. So you got comparables, power forward comparables. You got Brady Tkachuk. I helped do his contract. You got Svechnikov in Carolina. We used him as a comparable in the negotiation. And you've got other power forwards around the league that you can utilize as a comparable for Matthew Knies. And I don't think they're obscene. I think you got to max out at 8 years. And, everything starts at 8, I think, on Matthew Knies. And you go forward. But that's how the market is. I mean, that's how you got to do it. Again, it depends internally. I don't want to speak for them. But internally, you have to be ready for those comparables. Svechnikov and Tkachuk are two that immediately come to mind. Mm-hmm. And then they got to, I don't know if you can use Matthew. It's a different, era.
Yeah.
Matthew's already won the Stanley Cup and been in the final another time.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's one of those things to look at. But here's one thing that I think is really important for Toronto. you said something that's really smart, Jeff, and you say a lot of things that are smart, but this was smart, and that is you got to identify your core quick.
Bingo.
You got to be proactive. I look at the Florida Panthers roster. I did an exercise this morning, and go look at how many of those players were actually drafted by their team.
Oh, I know.
And how many of those players were acquired through trade or free agency? It's not even close. You don't
waivers. Waivers.
That's all part of Forsling. Yeah, that's all part of professional acquisition. Remember when Cliff Fletcher said draft schmaft?
Yep.
Yeah,
of course.
Florida Panthers been saying that forever.
You're not wrong. And there's a couple of interesting things about the two Florida teams. Outside of Steven Stamkos and Victor Hedman, I would always marvel at Tampa and say, like, there's no first rounders here. Like, these are all like second, and they did a great job on waivers and trades. Like, I mean, Vasilevsky's a first round pick too, so let's throw him in. But you're bang on about Florida. But the thing about Florida under Zito was, like, this, and the thing that it wasn't that long ago that the Florida Panthers were considered an easy 2 points. Tampa was going to give you a fight, but don't worry about it because you're going to pick up an easy 2 points when you played Florida. And then Bill Zito got the job, and the first thing he did was bring in Patrick Hornquist and then said, that's the kind of player we want. And then it was Sam Bennett, and then it was Tkachuk, and now it's Marchand, and they just became awful to play against. Like, there's no secret here. Like, the marriage of skill and toughness is what wins you Stanley Cups, no matter how you acquire it.
I agree with you. And I want to add one more thing, and I say this with the highest level of respect. Paul Maurice is really good with a soundbite, and he's unbelievable with a quip. Paul Maurice is a tough guy. His teams don't play soft guy hockey. He looks like a professor that should be at Western or Queens or at University of Toronto. He does.
Yeah.
But he doesn't like that kind of hockey. He likes hard guy hockey. Those guys play right on the edge, and look at how many times they're over the edge. And look at after every whistle, they lure you in to being uncomfortable because that's how they're comfortable. That's their comfort level. They make you uncomfortable. Yeah. And that's why we saw what we saw last night. The panic point of the Leafs was off the charts. That's why we saw Mitchell acting the way he did. That's why we saw Berube act the way he did. That's why Morgan Riley makes a bad pinch trying to do somebody else's job because he's trying to be aggressive.
One of the things that I want to get your thoughts on, the nature of the Maple Leafs in this division. So you look around and, previous to this season, Boston, Tampa, always in that conversation. Now Florida as finalists and then Stanley Cup winners as well. There's I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people that said, like, if they played in the Metropolitan, you'd feel different about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And my point back has always been, if the Maple Leafs played in the Metropolitan Division, we wouldn't know who the Maple Leafs are. We would have a false sense of who they are. The thing about playing in the Atlantic that is so interesting is you know exactly what you have, and you know exactly what your team is. There's no lying, right? You can be a really successful, with all due respect to everyone in the Metropolitan Division, but you can lie to yourself about how good you are as a team. How to look back at as the Maple Leafs progress through the playoffs and thinking about, and you'll remember this, the days of the Norris division, right? Where all you needed was 60 points. Chuck Norris, everyone had like 8 or 9 sluggers on their team, and what's this round black thing spinning around? Yeah, we'll get to that after we pick up the gloves. You get 60 points and you make the playoffs. You knew nothing about your team, and then you get absolutely crushed. But when you played, Edmonton or Calgary or Vancouver or Los Angeles, like anyone, Winnipeg Jets in the old Smythe division. The thing about the Atlantic is there's no lies. You know what you have when you play in the Atlantic division. Florida knows what they have. Tampa, Boston, everybody. That's why it's so hard for Buffalo. It's so hard for Detroit. You just mentioned so hard. When you play in this division, you know exactly what's under the hood. Do you have a thought on that one, Pierre?
Yeah, and I love that way you looked at that because it's 100% true. Boston found out really quick. Think about 2 years ago, an 8 seed goes in and plays a 1 seed, the Florida Panthers, and they win a Game 7 in Boston. That starts a downward spiral of the Boston Bruins, by the way. And that this year, 2 years later, they're out of the playoffs. The Buffalo Sabres for years were equal with the Ottawa Senators. Ottawa took the next step. Buffalo has not. Detroit was the same kind of rebuilding path as Ottawa. Ottawa's taken the next step. Detroit hasn't. Montreal's leapfrogged both Detroit and Buffalo because of aggressive management and acquisitions at the pro level. So, again, you have a thought on it? Yeah, the Atlantic is really tough. And you're spot on. You know exactly what your team is. You couldn't be more correct.
You learn so fast. Let me get a thought on a couple of players here, specifically from last night. Man, it wasn't that long ago that everyone said, like, Seth Jones is done. He's washed. He's overpaid. Look at him in Chicago. And we've seen this before, specifically with blue liners. It's so tough to distinguish yourself as a high-end player when you're playing as a defenseman on a really bad team. Seth Jones is an excellent defenseman. I'll tell you, Dallas had a really long look at Seth Jones this year. Like, I thought, like, there were two that I was really wondering about with Dallas. One was Rasmus Anderson. The other was Seth Jones. And listen, Texas background, that's obvious, but they really looked at him, and I thought that was going to be one of Nils' major acquisitions. Bill Zito gets out in front of it and brings in Seth Jones, and we all kind of said, maybe that's just Ekblad insurance. Who knows? But I haven't watched every Chicago game in the last 2-3 years since Seth Jones got there, however long it was from Columbus. That is that game last night might have been the best I have seen Seth Jones since the early, or even since he was dominating in Portland with the Winterhawks. Like, he was phenomenal.
When he played for Phil Housley at the World Junior, I think it was 2013 or 2014, and he wins. That was great, Seth Jones. I think part of the lure for Seth Jones to Florida, Billy Zito had him in Columbus.
Yeah.
Paul Maurice spends a lot of time around Columbus. There was a lot of stuff going on about Seth Jones. There was a sense of familiarity bringing him down there. And here's the one thing, and you would know this, for most of our viewers and listeners, they wouldn't appreciate this as much. Sylvain Lefebvre is not getting nearly enough credit coaching down in Florida with the defense. And everybody marvels at Gustav Forsling. Everybody was marveling at Brandon Montour. Everybody was marveling at Oliver Ekman-Larsson and all the development of all these defensemen that go to Florida. Now they're looking at Seth Jones. Seth Jones gone to another level. Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
There's one constant with all these guys. It's Sylvain Lefebvre. And he doesn't get nearly enough credit there. And I'm glad that people are starting to realize that's becoming a really good place to send guys that have underachieved maybe earlier in their careers.
Yeah.
And go to Florida, and they can learn from a guy that's learned from a lot. Sylvain learned from Jacques Laperriere, the late Pat Burns. He had a lot, Larry Robinson, he had a lot of good coaches. Sylvain worked with a lot of good people.
So here becomes a problem now for the Florida Panthers. And they're going to have a really tough out here with the Carolina Hurricanes, who are a really frustrating team to play against, as we all know. But the problem with being a successful organization now, Stanley Cup final, win the Stanley Cup, get into the conference final, they're not going anywhere. It's one thing to keep the band together and all the players, coaches, assistant managers. Like, at what point does that, what it's like, Pierre? Everyone looks around and goes, I wonder if we could wiggle this guy free, because what the Florida Panthers are doing, we want some of that mojo here. Like, to your like the end, like, other teams have noticed, right? Like, at this point, like, all of a sudden people are going to start to say, like, okay, where are the Panthers vulnerable? Essentially what I'm asking, Pierre, is, are people ready to play pirate and steal things from the Florida Panthers?
One of the first things that happen if people want to pirate anybody, the Buffalo Sabres should be talking to Rick Dudley. I'm on the road a lot. I watch a lot of games in a lot of different cities and a lot of different venues. Major, junior, college, USHL, BCHL. I watch a lot of games in a lot of places. Yeah. Rick Dudley's in so many places. If you look at so their team down in Charlotte is in a real good position right now. They're ahead of the Hershey Bears in the American Hockey League playoffs. I think they're up 2-0 in their series. And I just tell you that Rick's a big part of that. And you look at a lot of the players that have come in there at the pro level, those waiver pickups, Rick's got a lot of fingerprints on that. Just like Paul Fenton has a lot of fingerprints on that. Those are all the people that are insulating Billy Zito. So the answer is, I could see people paying attention to that. They should be.
Dudley to Buffalo. I mean, there's a background there. Does he bring the bandana along with him just for old time's sake, Pierre?
Okay. Can I just throw this one at you? You probably don't remember.
Go for it.
I'm a kid at the Forum. It's an afternoon. I think it's a Saturday afternoon game. They didn't have a lot of them back then, but I think this was one. And Rick Dudley may have scored. And I used to only time I'd go to the Forum and not cheer for the Canes when Boston came for Bobby Orr. It's the only guy I cheered for another team was Bobby Orr. So I'm sitting there with my brothers, and Rick Dudley has his red headband on, and he goes coast to coast for the entire team. Yep. It's one of the nicest goals. I think you can go on YouTube. It's still there. One of the nicest goals I've ever seen scored in the Montreal Forum. It was scored by Rick Dudley. So every time I see Duds on the road, I'm like, dude, you broke my heart when I was a kid. He went through the whole team. He's like, well, I got a little bit lucky.
But here's the thing though about Dudley too. He probably did that and then could have skated to the bench and challenged the whole team. Like
John
great
Winston.
player.
Like
what was it? Winston was it the Whalers or the North Stars?
It was Boston, Minnesota.
That's right. And he went out. It was great. He did the T-stop and then in front of the bench just invited everybody and then gave him one of these. Like no one's jumping off the bench. That's right. All right, a couple of final thoughts here as we circle back to the Toronto Maple Leafs and we wonder about what's next here. And I guess the biggest voice in all of it, won't be Brad Treliving and won't be Brendan Shanahan. It'll be Keith Pelly, who we heard from last year. Like, what do you think happens? What do you think happens here? I know Leafs fans right away, the wound is close to the bone. Everything's exposed right now. Everyone's really raw. Fire everybody, trade everybody, start again. And the reality is you're not going to do that. But how profoundly different, Pierre, given the market too. Like, let's not forget too, like this is right now it's torches at the castle gate. Like this is like peasants and pitchforks. That's what they want. Peasants and pitchforks. How different does it look next year?
I think it will look different from a player perspective. I don't think you'll see turnover in the coaching staff unless somebody gets a head job somewhere. I think the staff will be back, and they should be. They had 82 games of really good stuff. They finished first in their division, and a very hard division we talked about. I do think there'll be some turnover in the front office. I don't know who or where. I don't think Brad Treliving's going anywhere. Mm-hmm. Brendan's been there, 14 years now? He's been there a long time. Mm-hmm. Brendan, he's been there a long time.
Yep.
So, and I'm sure, look, Keith's the major domo. I was signed by Keith. I worked for Keith for 11 years. I have so much respect for Keith. He's orchestrated. He's professional. What people forget about him, he's run other professional sports teams before. Like he ran the Toronto Argonauts and they won the Grey Cup.
Yep.
Nobody talks about that enough when it comes to Keith Pelly. He understands the dynamic of being part of a winning program. And so I think he'll make calculated moves, but he will not panic. He won't throw people under the bus. And he'll take some time to, I think, debrief with some of his other lieutenants before he does anything.
Now, I was mentioning last week on the show, Anthony Stewart's dad has a great saying or a great question. Are you a team or are you a club? And you look at the Maple Leafs, and we saw what happened in 7. We saw what happened in 5. I don't think anyone said this team is a team. This team is a club. I talked to one other person last week, and this person bluntly said to me, too many individual brands. Too many individual brands. What do you think it takes to make this a capital T team?
The depth players have clearly defined roles, and they're not moved up and down the roster like they're on an elevator or an escalator. This is your job. This is what you're going to do. If you don't like it, we're going to put you on waivers or we're going to trade you. So there has to be an tough, tight organizational message to every single player that's part of this group. Should you choose to accept the responsibility and the role we're giving you, you get to stay. Should you choose not to, you'll move. It's not a threat. It's a promise. And that's how it has to work. Most of my ideology in hockey comes from having learned at the foot of Scotty Bowman and Craig Patrick and Brian Burke. And these are all tough people. And they ran their business in a polite way, but in a tough way, very tough way. And I think that's where Toronto needs to get to. And one other thing, just to build off your point, which I thought was so good, are you a club or a team? The thing about making Toronto different, most fans, not all, but most fans don't buy their tickets there. It's a corporate entity. Would you agree? It's not like Buffalo.
Completely.
It's not like Buffalo. Mm-hmm. I think there's going to be pressure brought to bear on a lot of these corporations, and they're going to bring the pressure on the Leafs that you got to fix this. And if not, the $300,000 worth of seats that we buy, we're not doing that. We're cutting it to $150. Mm-hmm. I can see that coming, and that's why Keith Pelly is such an important part of this. He understands the marketplace. He understands it very well.
Let's try to end on a positive. Positive, we've already talked about Matthew Nyes, like his wonderful season that he's had, distinguishing himself. I thought Max Domi was really good in this series. I thought Max Domi was really good again last night. What are some of, I know Maple Leafs fans may not want to hear this today, but like when I woke up where I am, the sun came up. I suspect it was the same place where you are right now, Pierre. Any positives? You're a Maple Leafs fan. You're talking to a Maple Leafs fan. Like, what are the positives you take away?
Christopher Tanev and his play. Simon Benoit, how much he improved over the year.
Yeah.
I'm really positive about those guys. Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Wall. I think there's a potential to have an amazing 1-2 tandem there, and it's for $5 million or less for another year. That's a tremendous position of strength for the Leafs. And then I would say the other thing is the coaching. I think their coaching staff is outstanding. It's not a little bit good. It's really good. If I have one quibble with them, it was deferring to the 5 forwards on the power play for long periods of time, especially in this series. Florida was really predatory on that, and they created a lot of momentum swings because Toronto wasn't as good and Florida was much better. And so I would have changed out of that a little bit quicker. But outside of that, I have mostly positives about this team. This entire year I thought was 82 games of really good stuff. And I think the future is bright. But everybody wants the future tomorrow. They don't want it 3 days down the road. They want it tomorrow. And there's still going to have to be some patience required. But I saw way more positive than negative with this team this year.
It's really hard to sell patience to me. I get it. I understand what you're saying. It's so hard to sell patience to try Maple Leafs fan base that has been false started so many times. I mean, listen, you think about the Washington Capitals, and they had that 1 year and they won the Cup. And they've had hard times getting out of the first round. They'll make it there, and they've had a hard time. And this year, they won the round against Montreal, and then got beaten by the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, I keep going. I had an interesting conversation with someone, actually someone from another league last night, who texted me and said, "Listen, I know it's 14 years of futility for the Buffalo Sabres, but given how crushing these seasons are for the Toronto Maple Leafs, what's worse?" I'm like, you know what? When you kind of frame it that way. Anyhow, great stuff as always. Thanks for grabbing a scalpel here for the Maple Leafs autopsy. Always appreciated, Pierre. You be well, and we'll check back soon.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I appreciate it. Take care, everybody.
There he is, the great Pierre McGuire, noted hockey analyst here, drops by the program regularly. Zach, I want to throw this one over to you before we get to what's on the horizon and the calendar. Was there anything in there that you thought that we missed on or left out, or anything, whether it was people in the chat, and it's a lively one again today, anything that you think that we should have gone over, anything you want to hear me go over that I may have left out? I tried to be as thorough as I can. I don't know that I did enough on the Florida Panthers there, to be honest with you, and how great Brad Marchand was. Oh, one thing I did want to mention. Okay, Paul Maurice is brilliant, as Pierre was just mentioning, and we all love Paul Maurice. You know, him talking about how good the Maple Leafs are, and Brad Marchand talking about how good the Maple Leafs are. You know who wants Maple Leafs to stay the same? Everybody who plays the Toronto Maple Leafs wants them to stay exactly the same. Like, this could not have been more transparent. Oh no, these guys are awesome. Oh, this is a tough out. Like, it's just the fan base puts too much pressure on them. I wouldn't change a thing. Oh, it's all different now with this team. And all I'm thinking in the back of my mind is, every team in the NHL wants the Maple Leafs to stay exactly as they are. Just right there. Just like, and I'm like, no, that's Paul Maurice's masterclass again.
Yeah, I thought that this was the closest iteration they've come to being like a tough team, annoying team, whatever you want to say, to play against.
Yeah.
And yet they still had that in them, Jeff. It was like, it was just easy enough where it was like, no, they should stick to, I think they should give it another go. I think they should try again.
Run it back. Run it back, Zach.
I don't want to hear those words. I am glad, I'll just say, that I did not have to hear lessons learned. I know why Johnny T said it every year. I don't blame, actually have an issue, but every year I go on the post-game show after the final game and I'm like, oh, they learned the lessons.
Look, this is going to be a fascinating offseason. And I know so much of the focus is going to be on Mitch Marner and what happens and where does he go and where's the decimal point and how's he going to look, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Pierre and I kind of had this conversation, albeit briefly. I think that there's room for John Tavares on this team as a center, but not a 2C. They still need a 2C. Yep. John Tavares is not going to be a 2C, but I do see some teams out there that will be and again, I'll swing it back to Utah, that are looking for a 2C that can really help them. Listen, there's a team in the province right next to Ontario that has a need for a second line center as well to play behind Nick Suzuki, who would probably look at John Tavares and make a suitable offer as well. All I'm saying is, if John Tavares is going to come back, it's going to be a passion play for him to come back, because there will be other teams that are up that will offer him legitimate 2C money. It just can't be the Toronto Maple Leafs. Again, to me, here's the shopping list. And again, you don't have, there's no prospects coming to help, no prospects coming to save, no draft capital, all of it. It's going to be really tough. Number 1D. That's not cheap. 2 top 4 wingers and a second line center. Until this team gets that, those are the holes. Those are the holes. I can see Marner going somewhere else. I know there's all kinds of conversation about have to get rid of Austin Matthews and you got to trade the captain. Everything has to be on the table. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, and I don't think Nylander is going anywhere either. Although, man, Morning Cuppa wasn't exactly, and Colby specifically, not exactly thrilled at the amount of circles that William Nylander was making last night.
He had a bad series.
And then by the way, I got to get back to the neutral zone there. But really, there's a big shopping list here still, and as much as the emergence of Matthew Knies helps, there's still a lot of work here.
Yeah, my only thing with that is just I feel like there's going. Look, this will be the second time I guess they've done this here now in this era or this iteration of this team, but I feel like they'll just approach this differently. My thought process behind it is along the lines of, is there anybody on Florida that is as skilled as Matthews, Marner, and Tavares? I would say no. Skill. I'm not talking about quality of player, just skill. Is there anybody as skilled? No, I don't think so. That's not an knock on anybody on the Panthers.
There's kind of a guy there that is going to win. There's a guy there whose last name is Finnish for Bergeron.
Yeah.
Whose skill I will put up against a lot of people in the NHL.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not going to dispute you on that. That's fair. But my point is, you look at the construction of that team and where each player fits in, and I thought Pierre said it very well. Defined roles. Maybe they just look to fit guys in who play a very specific role within that team. And maybe it's guys that fit into those positions that you're talking about. The defense thing, I don't think that you can just find in the aggregate. That's not happening. Tried some shit like that. Didn't work here. But I think the top of this forward group is the one that I could see them trying to get a little bit creative on, i.e. the Sam Bennett's and those types of players. I wonder if they look out there and see who's available on the trade market, what players might need a new spot, or what teams might be looking to move on from some guys. Yeah. Who knows what happens, but that's the ones that I start to wonder and think about how they assemble things, because I understand losing Mitch Marner is a big loss, but again, you have a lot of the same player, and I just wonder if they look to go and see what they can find that is a different style of player to fill in that role. It's not going to bring you 100 points on that from that one player, Jeff. That's the one thing Leafs fans need to be very, very prepared for. But I mean, look at what Florida did. They traded Jonathan Huberdeau, who, and I'm going to get the number wrong, but he had over 100 points.
Yep.
I think it was 110, right?
110 or 115 points.
And he gets traded for Matthew Tkachuk, who let's not
hang on
pretend
a
like we
second.
all thought that was a beautiful trade. But
hang on, Matthew Tkachuk was part of the best line in the NHL with Lindholm and Gaudreau. Like that was, I will put that against any line in the NHL. That was the best line in the NHL. They were. They were. I know I might be in the minority on this because I looked at that trade and I was like, holy. First of all, I thought it was great for Tree Living that he got Huberdeau and like, oh, this is an elite level playmaker. This is
Uyghur.
Fantastic. But that's the thing about Tree Living. Like if you look at Tree Living's background, if you look at the moves that he's made, you know what he always tries to get in every trade? He always tries to get a defenseman. He's a fascinating. Tree Living's a fascinating guy when it comes to trades because he always tries to get a defenseman with everything that he does. Oh, I'm gonna make the Huberdeau trade and I gotta get a defenseman. I'm gonna bring in Uyghur. This is like his entire past is he always tries to get a blue liner. But I kind of looked at that and went, okay, we all know the situation with Tkachuk, and we all know where this is heading, and Tree Living's going to have to make the best of all possible worlds here. Zito just wants to get, like, nasty players, and Matthew Tkachuk, even though, once upon a time was heralded as, hey, maybe that's the next captain of the Calgary Flames, we all know that he was, maneuvering his way out of town, and we all thought eventually he's going to go to the St. Louis Blues. But I thought that was a good trade for both teams, that it was addressing a need for both. Like they were going to lose Tkachuk, and Tree Living turned into someone who was coming off a 115-point season. Mm-hmm. Who knew he was going to fall on his face?
Yeah,
in Calgary.
Yeah. My point is just they've flipped out the guy with the points. I know Matthew Tkachuk had a big season that year that he was traded. I think he had 104 points it was that season. But he was a guy who would put up 60, 40, like in that range. So there was no guarantee that it was going to be crazy, putting up crazy points. And I agree with you and how good his line was. And they just said, hey, this is the type of player that we need. We're not looking for him to fill 115 points of Jonathan Huberdeau. We're looking for him to fill this style of player. Now, he might be an anomaly in the entire NHL, not just his team. Yeah. But regardless, that was kind of what they identified, and they said, hey, this is what we have to do. This is how we have to change things.
That is. But that Zito, the early days of Zito with the Panthers, again, that was a reflection of the Florida Panthers were an easy 2. They were an easy 2 points. They were a pushover. Like you don't need, like don't worry about ice in the room. Like no one's getting hurt. Like it's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about making ice. We're gonna be okay. We'll barely need the hot towels. We'll just get our 2 points and move on. And they were like an easy team to play against. And Zito's like, enough. No more. Like we're just gonna get nasty, nasty hockey players. And if it's gonna cost us some points along the way, okay, we're never gonna win the division. Like, okay, fine. Who cares? We're too easy to play against. That was it. This was like, what it was like? I'll tell you what it was like. It was like the Philadelphia Flyers. Grandpa's going to go old school here. But the Philadelphia Flyers were a reaction to the St. Louis Blues. The St. Louis Blues historically always had sluggers. And the Philadelphia Flyers would go to St. Louis and they would physically get manhandled. Right? Noel Picard, Gasoff, the Plaguers would kick the crap out of the Florida Panthers, out of the Philadelphia Flyers. And finally, Ed Snyder said, enough. No more. We're going out and we're getting killers because we're not going to keep going to St. Louis and getting beaten up. It's the exact same thing. And they won 2 Stanley Cups out of it. It's the same thing the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panther story is not unlike the Philadelphia Flyers stories of the 70s at all. They went out there and got tough and were hard to play against and were miserable and treated suspensions like the cost of doing business, same as the Philadelphia Flyers did in the 70s. It's not identical, but what's the old Mark Twain line? History doesn't repeat itself, but oftentimes it rhymes. The Florida Panthers rhyme with the Philadelphia Flyers from the 70s. It's the same type of construction. And there would not have been a 70s Philadelphia Flyers with the 2 Stanley Cups if it weren't for the St. Louis Blues. And we wouldn't have this edition of the Florida Panthers if there wasn't the previous edition of the Panthers, which got sand kicked in their face on a consistent basis. It's the exact same philosophy. This is nothing new. Again, there are no new ideas anywhere. There's no such thing as new ideas anywhere. In entertainment, music, movies, TV, it doesn't matter. There's no new ideas. Same as hockey. There's no new ideas. Yeah. Be hard to play against. Be tough. And skilled.
Jeff, I checked out Puckpedia, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
where you can do like the armchair GM type of thing, which I'll probably fire up later. Okay. This I think you'll get a kick out of, and I think people in the chat will as well. Top 5 most traded players today. Number 1, David Kampf. 2, Cal Yarncroke. 3, Morgan Riley. 4, Nick Robertson. Number 5, Austin Matthews. Top 5 popular signings today. Number 1, Matty Nyes. 2, Tavares. 3, Sam Bennett. 4, Mitch Marner. 5, Stephen Lorenz. And then I looked over. They have a pie chart. How many teams were created, or like GMs people were being the GM of today? Okay, yep. 5,542 total rosters today were created. 2,711 of them were Maple Leafs rosters.
Well, that's the good thing about, I think there's, 3.5 million, 4 million who live in Toronto, and like our population in Canada is like 40 million. All of them are general managers. Everybody in the country is a general manager, and all living on Puckpedia, which is a freaking awesome site. I love those guys. They do great work. I want to do more on Winnipeg. I don't want to. We're getting to the end of the show here, and I want to mention something about Winnipeg because, just like everybody else, like Saturday was a complete gut punch for everyone, and condolences to the Scheifele family. I do understand how it was funny. I was having a conversation with my wife on Saturday about this. I was out of town. I was calling her. We were talking about the Scheifele situation with Winnipeg, and I'm like, Scheifele's going to play. And she said, of course he is, because if he doesn't, he's going to regret it his whole life. Mm-hmm. That he didn't go out and play. And I'm like, that's a really good point, because I think we all personalize, like, what would I do in that situation? Like when my father died, and I was working at Sportsnet. My dad died. I remember getting the phone call while I was on the air doing Hockey Central. It was at 12:30, and I missed a phone call, and I'm like, okay, it's the hospital. Okay, I'll see what's going on. And so on the break, I called back, and the nurse said, like, your dad's shutting down. And my first thought was, like, I got to go. But first I'm going to finish the show. And the two people that I was on with, like, not a freaking chance. Get out of here. We will drive you to the hospital if you don't go. And then, thankfully I got to the hospital in time, and he was going, and thankfully I got to be there when he passed. Which, if you've never, just as an aside, if you've never had that experience, it is one of the most beautiful experiences you will ever have in life, is being present when someone passes. Specifically, if it's a parent. It is actually, I know it's a horrifying thought, because that little scared child in you dies as your parent passes, but it is really a beautiful life moment. But all that I did was, like, miss one TV show. I was doing the Wednesday show, and we were supposed to be in Winnipeg, and I had to stay at the hospital and make funeral arrangements and all that. But so we always try to personalize it, and I really don't know what my decision would have been if I was playing in the NHL, until my wife said, of course he's going to play. Of course he's going to play, because he's going to regret it his entire life if he doesn't. And if you've never had a parent pass, part of you kind of goes on autopilot as you get things done, because there's a lot of things that have to happen. First of all, there is a shock to the system, obviously, but then you get into, okay, what do we need to do mode, and you don't allow yourself the space to grieve. And for anyone who's ever lost a parent, understands that, and that's why the visual was so overwhelming, of when Harley scored that goal, the one shot of Scheifele in the penalty box. I bet that was the first moment he allowed himself to grieve. Because when he got the news, there is the shock, and then there's the I'm going to play. And that takes all of your attention. And that smile when he scored that first goal for the Winnipeg Jets. And then the whole game went on. And then that penalty, which my personal theory is, first of all, I think it should have been a penalty shot. My thought is the official did a real solid and said, let's let his team try to defend this. Let's try to make sure Scheifele's team has an opportunity not to end the game like this. But then the other part of me, well, oh man, don't end this game with him in the penalty box. all of it, like we saw all throughout the day, and hearing Scott or Neil talk about it, that moment, anyone who's lost a parent or lost someone really close to him, I've lost both my parents. Everyone who's had that experience knows exactly what Scheifele's went through at that moment and has recognized it. There was 2 moments where I really saw it. One, sitting alone in the penalty box. Let's not forget, that might have been the only time that he was alone all day long, sitting in that penalty box. And then secondly, not Handshake Alley itself. And I'm not a handshake guy. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that. I'm not a forced handshake guy. I understand why Kelly Rudy never liked it. I understand why Stan Mikita wouldn't do it. I understand why a lot of Billy Smith, like I understand it because of that nature of that competition. It's hard for some guys just to turn it off and say, no, I can't do it. But once the handshakes were done and he was skating off the ice and he folded over, that was a moment for me. Because there are those moments that you go through after you lose a parent or lose a loved one, someone very close to you, spouse, God forbid, child. There are those moments where your body just collapses. And it was heartbreaking. It was just absolutely crushing to watch that. And good on Dallas Stars fans who stepped up to donate money in $55 denominations to a lot of the charities that Mark Scheifele, the Scheifele family, always supported in Manitoba. I thought that was beautiful. Good on Dallas Stars fans. One of the best things we've seen all season long. And man, you grieve how you have to grieve. And I was happy for Scheifele that he was able to do that, because I really do agree with my wife. And there's no right decision in that moment. If he would have said, like, I'm not playing, I'm going back to Ontario, I need to be with my family, everyone would have understood it. But I do understand the greater perspective of, if he didn't play that game, he probably would have thought about it for the remainder of his life. I really, really firmly believe that. As someone who's lost both parents, I know that feeling of getting into, I have this to do, I have these responsibilities, I will grieve later. I will allow myself to grieve later. The box and then the fold after. That was it for me on Saturday. I don't know about you, Zach, but that was it for me.
Yeah, I sat there watching that, and I watched the penalty, and as soon as he laid out, I was like, oh no, because he went out to make the play to break it up, knew that penalty was coming. I thought, again, as well, I also thought it should have been a penalty shot, but we're past that. Yep. But I saw him lay out, I'm like, no, like, not him. You know, actually, one of the things that was going through my head was, maybe this is good, because starting the period with the power play is not always like the best thing for a team. I'm like, maybe they can just get out of here. Like, break this up, 13, 14 seconds, get out. When I felt like I lost the game. Like, that was like when the Leafs lose. Like, I sat there just being like nothing. Like, I just was watching, being like, I can't believe that had to happen like that. Like, just the hockey gods can be really cruel sometimes. And man, the handshakes, the hugs, Adam Lowry going into the box to get him,
captain, right?
That was the first moment for me where, like, my eyes were filling, and I was like, I couldn't watch that. Like, I obviously did, but just seeing him have to go in there to pick him up and get him out was like, this burns. It was tough.
It does. It's awful. Bless that family. And again, to every Dallas Stars fan that did that on Saturday, you're beautiful. Like, that's a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah.
The height of a competition, in the height of battle, the embrace with Jamie Benn, who 48 hours previously was punching Mark Scheifele in the mouth. That was a real special embrace as well. There was a lot there, but good on the Dallas Stars fans, and bless the Scheifele family. Mark, good luck, man, and good luck to your entire family. There's no right way to do it. Do it, but however you want to do it. There's no book on any of it. Okay, we're gonna get to previews tomorrow. In the meantime, Guess how many games there are tonight?
Goose egg.
The Sheet is powered by FanDuel. Let's see if we can stretch one here. Sheet is powered by FanDuel, home of the 7-game parlay. Make every moment more on FanDuel. FanDuel, proud to connect fans to the major sports moments that matter to them. And tonight, May 19th, we have exactly bagel.
0
for games. Go do something. Go make a baby. Go for a walk. Go do anything. Whatever you got to do. Go do something else. Go do yoga. Go for dinner. Do something. Because tomorrow, I'm going to run a couple things down here. Tomorrow it gets really interesting, and not just in the NHL. Tomorrow, Western Conference Finals, Florida Panthers facing off against the Carolina Hurricanes. Rest versus rust, all these types of things coming up. We'll see what happens, and we'll do more on it tomorrow. Also Tuesday, Game 1, PWHL Walter Cup. Minnesota Frost facing off against the Ottawa Charge. Also on Tuesday, USHL Clark Cup, Game 5. Who wins the whole thing? Muskegon Lumberjacks, Waterloo Blackhawks. We will find out tomorrow. Or maybe Wednesday, because Game 4 went into double overtime.
I think Laz is working that game.
Oh, is Laz working it?
Yeah. Game 5 or 6, I believe. Yeah, one sec. I can confirm for you if you. But right. Yeah, he's working one of them. Yeah.
And then Friday, this might be the best field we've ever seen at the Memorial Cup. Game 1, Friday. Game 2, Saturday. Game 1, the host always plays the first game. That's for Mooski. They will face off against Gavin McKenna and the Medicine Hat Tigers. And then Saturday, this one is going to be a great coaches battle. I will be watching this one specifically for Dale Hunter versus Gardner McDougall. Moncton takes on London on Saturday, Zach. I personally think Moncton's the best team in the CHL, but we'll see. Quebec, despite whatever everyone says about them every single year, seem to win the Memorial Cup every single year, Zach. Just crushing the OHL and the Western Hockey League as well. So Game 1 Friday, Medicine Hat facing off against Rimouski, and then Game 2 Saturday, Moncton taking on London. And the sidebar, Dale Hunter versus the winning machine, that is Gardner McDougall. So that is your schedule starting tomorrow. But tonight, no games. Do something else. Find something else to do. What are you doing tonight, Zacharoo?
Catching up on work. That's the plan for tonight.
Look, your girlfriend puts up with a lot. Take her out to dinner. Like, you live just walk up to King Street. It's a beautiful restaurant. I used to go to when I used to live go to Hey Lucy. Love their calzones. Go to Hey Lucy and have a calzone. Come on, beautiful place to go take your girlfriend.
I took her to a wonderful spot on 590 King Street West called Greta Bar YYZ. That's.
Did she get the honey garlic, or did she get the extra spicy chicken wings? So did you splurge and get fries on the side too?
We did the Jamaican spring rolls. That was last night. Ooh, I think we had that and street nuggets with buffalo ranch sauce. Very, very, very kind of me, if I do say so myself.
Okay, well, you are a romantic. You two crazy kids. You are romantics. Listen, thanks so much for showing up in the chat. Specifically, thanks for watching on YouTube. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for listening on your favorite podcast platform, or as we always like to mention, maybe your least favorite, but you're stuck with it. Podcast platform. Thanks to Pierre McGuire for stopping by. That was good. Like, we did, I think we got as thorough as we could on this one, and whatever's left over, we'll do tomorrow on the program here. Thanks so much for joining us. Zach, scale of 1 to 10, really quick before you fade yourself out here. How are you doing today, just under 24 hours later, after the decimation, the hands of the cats?
Fine. I told you what was going to happen.
Oh, yeah, it's everyone's favorite word. Fine. How you doing, honey? Fine.
I'm fine. I told you what was going to happen. Yeah. Game 6 was the most predictable outcome. But the problem was that I'm stupid enough that I woke up on Sunday morning and was like, they could win today.
I got your
They
text.
could
Don't
win
worry.
today.
We had
I
interesting
know.
text exchanges on the weekend about what happened Friday subsequent. I know.
Yeah. I was never like overly upset after. The only thing that actually on the After Dark show like pushed me over the edge where I got really annoyed was when I read the Matthews passengers comment. And me and Rosie had some things to say about that one. Just that was the only one where I was like, you got to be kidding me. But I'm okay. We'll figure it out.
So the stages of grief, right? You had acceptance yet? Or are we still gonna take a while to get there, or did you hit fast forward? You're already there in acceptance.
Well, I'm in acceptance. I think being in acceptance on Thursday morning after Game 5 probably helped expedite this point right now, where it took me that, and then I went back, and then now I'm back to acceptance, and it's okay.
So that was the primer before the painting. That one got you ready to actually, okay. So you prime before you paint. Yeah. Okay, understood. I'm learning a lot about you here, Zach. This is wonderful. This is amateur psychotherapy. Okay. Thanks again to Pierre McGuire. Thanks to you for watching and or listening and hopping in the chat as always, which I have a hard time keeping my eyeballs off of. Thanks so much for being aboard today. We're back tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern. Don't forget Morning Cup of Hockey tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern. Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohen, DFO live at noon, and then our little act here at 3 bells Eastern. And we'll do it again tomorrow. And we'll preview Florida and Carolina and maybe whack the Edmonton-Dallas pinata as well. We'll figure it out. We got 23 hours to get there. Hope you can join us tomorrow. Thanks for joining us today. Talk to you later. Enjoy tonight. Do something not hockey. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.